Hi, I'm Jamal Palmer, and today I want to share with you a capstone on an issue that I'm passionate about. I will be talking about homelessness with a focus on a federal program called the Continuum of Care. So, over the past 5 years, I've been building intelligence products as an analyst, and going back even further, I'm just going to share my screen. Going back even further, I've been working with nonprofits and community organizations for over 10 years. So, what brought me to data analytics was my interest in addressing inefficiency in the public sector. And so this leads to my question: what is the relationship between the housing inventory count and the homeless? To answer this, I have to use Excel, Python, and Tableau, along with the Agile method. And all of this I learned through the Savvy Coders program. So during each sprint and introduction to new material, I would take steps necessary to produce this capstone by implementing the Agile method. And so this included having daily talks and stand-ups with my team, creating a plan of research and design, and develop the data set. And so I do that by researching the data set through HUD. And so I get that information. And then I have to consider, how do I want to design the actual data in the study? And what I come up with the help of my team, is I decide to limit the homeless categories to just sheltered, unsheltered, and then I also include a third category that is chronic homelessness. And so HUD's data, it's all available in Excel format. And so that's where I completed most of the data cleaning and the structuring. And next, using some standard coding in Python, I was able to combine all the Excel sheets and then save that combination, that newly saved file, back into Excel. And so from Excel, I've then imported it to Tableau, and that's how I'm able to provide you with this presentation. So let's just look at the data. In 2022, 571,811 people were reported to be homeless throughout the mainland US. And what this graphic shows is that each state has its own challenges dealing with homelessness, and that's likely because every individual's experience is different. But it also shows how concentrated homelessness is, meaning that a small number of states account for over 50% of the homeless population. And to the right, you can see that California alone is responsible for 30% of the entire country's homeless population. But other than those top 5 states, homelessness seems to be managed relatively well. It only has a median of about 4,500 people. Now, there are many reasons why some states would have a significantly larger portion of homelessness, but a study like that is beyond the scope of what I'm doing. So to show you some more data. So the graph here has a similar information, but we can better visualize the disparity between the states with larger counts and those which sit at, near, and under the mean. And so it also gives some context to how homelessness is dispersed through the most affected states. If you look at the bottom graph, which shows you the different categories of homelessness. But again, talking about the variation in homelessness, California, we know, has the largest amount of homeless people, but they look so much different than New York does. And so generally, for most states, you can kind of see here, sheltered homelessness is more available. And so with California, we see over 1 million people unsheltered, which is unlike any of the other states. And that may point to a different issue, which needs further observation, right? It could be the geographic location, it could be the weather, it could be a few other things. And so, show you some more information. So with this, I wanted to provide some better context as to how HUD actually defines its homelessness. And so we can read here that there are distinct differences between chronic, emergency shelter, and transitional housing, all the categories that I selected. Right. And just to kind of read it off for a bit, chronic really refers to someone who has been in and out of the system, while emergency shelter is talking about those homeless that we're kind of familiar with, people who are in a shelter, may be there for a short period of time. And then you have the actual transitional housing, which seems, at least from my point of view, to be the ideal situation in which you people are able to be helped to the point where they're able to uh, be stable on their own. But here we could just see that homelessness has vastly, kind of outmatched the amount of beds available, at least over the span of this 15 years. So this next chart, it shows the trend of homelessness over that 15 years that I talked about. So I chose to cover the study from 2007 to 2022 because that's all the data there is on the point in time count, and with the housing inventory count, that's everything that HUD had available. So I assess that that's when the program pretty much started, or at least when they started to record. But from this graph, we can see that homelessness has almost always exceeded the number of beds available. So this isn't necessarily something odd. But there is one year that makes the exception. So in 2021, that was the first and only time where the housing inventory count actually went over the amount of homeless people reported. But the key word there is reported. So during 2021, we were still in the midst of COVID. And so it was likely that the sanctions were still up. And so people weren't as available to actually go out and count. And so that likely would be what contributed to this low number, because we could see the following year, 2022, that the number spikes up. So it goes right back from what was sitting in the 500,000s, dropping to 377, and then rising back up to 571, which would make it the highest it's been over since 2012, so 10 years. And so to discuss findings, what I found from doing this. So each of these graphics represent a scatter plot showing the relationship between two variables. And so I use homelessness as my independent variable, and I measure its influence on the housing inventory count. And something to note is that the circles represent a single data point, but depending on how close the points cluster together will determine if we can find a clear trend. But with these graphs, I can assess that as homelessness increases, the total number of beds increases as well, even if only slightly. Now, the concern with this graph is that not all categories of homelessness have the same influence. For example, the chronic and unsheltered homeless populations don't have as strong of an influence on getting beds when it comes to either emergency shelter or transitional housing beds. But this is very important because the unsheltered and the chronic homeless often have the greatest needs and require more support. And so just kind of going back to the trends of homelessness, one thing I do want to mention is that a flaw with the point in time count is that it's only done once per year, right? And so homelessness, again, because it's different for everyone, not everyone becomes homelessness at the same time, or not everyone becomes homeless at the same time. Therefore, having only one count a year isn't exactly getting everybody. But just going back to the study, we can see in this graph is that there is a significant drop in the annual counts of that chronic and unsheltered, which likely also contributed back to 2021 with the major drop. And so it's kind of, we're kind of seeing some patterns here in which the unsheltered and the chronic, they have the most need. They're also the most difficult to record since they're not based in a specific area or an address. You can't just count them as if they were in a shelter. You have to go out there and find and locate and get them to self-report and things of that sort. But it's really important that we actually do get that information, not just for their safety, but local governments need to have an accurate assessment of the population within their jurisdiction. So in summary, what I really want you to take from this capstone is that homelessness isn't one dimensional and that it can affect anyone based on a bunch of different reasons and variables. And then I also want you to think about transitional housing, this idea that you can get support until you're able to stabilize yourself. Unfortunately, those types of resources have seen drops year after year. So it looks like they're going away, even though it may potentially be the best resource available to homeless people because it can provide that long-term solution. So just something to keep in the back of your mind. And then also, we now know that the unsheltered and chronic homeless population are at an increased risk. But lastly, and most importantly, we can see how data analytics can really be implemented to help solve or at least spread awareness about these types of social issues. So I would really like to thank everyone. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and a very special thank you to the Savvy Coders program and its staff for their support in helping me complete this product. But if you would like to learn more about homelessness or data analytics, attached to the bottom of this slide are several resources, including the Savvy Coders website. Thank you again, and goodbye.